It takes a bit of time. All right. So, yep. So we are live. Um, so, hello everyone. A very warm welcome to day 3 of the STEMPeers Global Conference 2020. Um, Today, the title of our session is The Transition from Postdoc to an Industrial Setting for Different STEM Careers. And we have a really diverse set of panelists and experts here who are going to talk about their success stories as well as the obstacles and hurdles faced during this transition. And prior to this, we had last weekend 2 more sessions where we discussed transitions from undergraduate and graduate careers respectively. And you can access them on our YouTube channel at STEMPeers. So my name is Manish. I am one of the organizers for this conference. I am actually a postdoc at UMass Medical School in Worcester. I am also currently in the process of transitioning from a postdoc to an industrial setting. So this is of personal interest to me, this session specifically. This session is going to be moderated by Abhijit. Abhijit is currently working as a lead scientist at Deciduous Therapeutics. And he recently transitioned from a postdoc at Buck Institute of Aging Research in California to Deciduous. And before that, he did his PhD from Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Abhijit to take over this session. Abhijit?
Hi. Thanks, Manish. And good morning, good evening, everyone. We are from different time zones. We're here right now. So which is very good to see the panel from like all over the world and get like the different views. So again, as Manish explained that this is my like the first transition, transition like 3 months back. So which was like a very different experience for me. So I think we'll start the panel by you can introduce each of you like in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then we'll go ahead from there with the different questions. So we can start with the panelist first. So Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Well, so hi everybody. Good afternoon. Here it's 4 p.m. Yeah, so my name is Christopher. I studied biology initially, and for the last 5 years, I did my PhD in Heidelberg at the German Cancer Research Center. Not working on cancer, but mostly in virology topics, so hepatitis C virus. And yeah, just finished this year, did a brief transition postdoc, finishing up stuff, and now writing up the manuscript. But early on, I realized that I want to transition to industries, so I started applying a couple of months ago, and now I'm right in the process, interviewing and writing applications. And yeah, that's it. So I'm here to discuss some issues I faced and some problems and hurdles, and I'm excited.
Saurav?
Hi everyone. My name is Saurav, and I'm currently working as a postdoc research scientist at Hackensack Meridian Health in New Jersey. So my work mostly involves understanding mechanisms of neurodegeneration and neuroinflammation in models of TBI and spinal cord injury, and how gene and peptide therapy could act as a potential therapeutic intervention to reduce those burden of injury. So I'm in my third year of postdoc right now, and I'm definitely looking for a transition to industrial setup where I can transfer the skill sets, whatever I have gained during this postdoc period, into those industry. And I'd like to thank the STEMPeers for giving me this opportunity to share these ideas and views and what challenges I'm facing right now in the process of transition, and learn more from the experts, and then go forward with it. Thank you.
Mason?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mason Latsko. I'm a postdoc here in Columbus, Ohio, Nationwide Children's Hospital. I actually just recently switched over to this postdoc from a postdoc up in Montreal, Canada, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you to STEMPeers for having me on, just to discuss the challenges that we're all facing, and to allow others who are seeking advice to kind of look to us as potential answers. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Now we have expert panelists. So we'll go with Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Lehman, and I am currently an associate scientific writer at Regeneron Pharmaceuticals in New York. And I made my foray into industry actually right after my PhD. So I did my doctoral work at the City University of New York, studying cancer metabolism, specifically the mTOR pathway. And then I transitioned into industry for my postdoc at Pfizer, in which I worked in their oncology group. And I was studying very similar pathways to what I was working on as a grad student. And then about 6 months ago, I left the bench to take on this role that I currently have at Regeneron, in which I do writing for regulatory submissions. So I basically work with scientists, gather their data, and write it up for IND and BLA filing. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation, and I'll pass it on to the next person.
Thanks, Alyssa. Sandhya?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sandhya Sriram, currently the CEO and co-founder of a cultured seafood or meat company called Shiok Meats here in Singapore. It's 11 p.m., but I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Manish and the rest of STEMPeers to invite me. I've known Manish for more than 10 years, as he's mentioned before. We actually met during my PhD at NTU here in Singapore. So my background is I'm a stem cell scientist by education and training, and did about 4 years of postdoctoral work after my PhD, but then quickly decided that academia is not my cup of tea, industry is not my cup of tea, and then was kind of in the midst of deciding what to do. So I took up a business development role with A-Star here in Singapore, where I basically learned finance, budgeting, commercialization, business development for science and biology, biotech over on the job per se. But along those lines, I also started my first ever entrepreneurial company, which is called Biotech in Asia, which was a science news website. Start up my second company 2 years later, which is an event company doing science events. And then 2018, my calling was to become a full-time entrepreneur, and I started Shiok Meats. So I've kind of dabbled between being a scientist, a part-time entrepreneur with a business development background, and finally, right now, I'm a full-time entrepreneur innovator. Thanks.
That's impressive. Okay, Saurav?
Hello, guys. And first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here, share my experience and inviting me. So I am currently working as a principal scientist with Vira Therapeutics, which is a subsidiary of Boehringer Ingelheim in Innsbruck. So I did my PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi in 2016, after which I moved for my postdoctoral research scientist role at Max Planck Institute of Biochemistry, which is located in Munich. And I worked there for about 4 years. I also had a pretty prestigious and competitive Marie Curie fellowship, but then at the end now, this was the time I was deciding what to do next, whether I have enough credentials to get those high profile academic jobs or industrial positions. And this opportunity just came out of nowhere, and so I took it. And yeah, I just joined like 2 months back here, very new, not so old. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So I think what I have decided that we'll have this session into two parts. In first part, we will talk about the transition, and the next part we'll talk about how's your life after you transition into your new role. So to begin with, I would like to ask our experts that now you are in totally different places. Like Alyssa is in New York, and Saurav is in Germany, and then Sandhya is in Singapore. So you have you must have a totally different strategies, because depending on the geographic location. So if you could share that, what was your strategy when you try to transition from your postdoc to the next level? So whoever wants to go first, you can. Okay, Alyssa.
Okay, thank you. So I think my experience is a little bit different because I transitioned from academia to industry between my PhD and my postdoc. So maybe that was more of the transitional time that I'll touch base on, if that's all right. So for me, I did my PhD in New York. I'm actually from New York, so I really wanted to stay in New York. But the options are very limited in pharma in general or in industry in New York. The options are becoming a lot greater now that there's a lot more smaller biotechs popping up in New York City. But at the time when I was transitioning, there really wasn't much. And for big pharma, it was even smaller. So I was really fortunate to be able to find Pfizer had an oncology group in New York, and the research that they wanted a postdoc for was right in line with my PhD research. So it was the perfect fit, and I just happened to know someone that had that job and was finishing their postdoc, and so they needed a new one. So for me, the transition depended completely on kind of like right time, right place, like right research background, and also knowing the right people. So networking is definitely key for everyone. When I was transitioning out of my postdoc and going on to this job that I have now at Regeneron, again, the same idea. It's kind of hard to find pharmaceutical companies in this New York area. Regeneron is one of the bigger ones that was near my area. And I was able to find a scientific writing position there that was actually something that I've always had an interest in. So it's a little challenging in New York to find the right opportunities, but networking is really important to kind of get you there.
So Alyssa, I have a question for you. So as you mentioned that networking is an important component for transition. So in your case, it was really helpful for you. So was the networking like based on like networking through some social media or in person?
So yeah, we're talking about a pre-COVID world. Mine was an in-person. The contact that helped me get my postdoc position at Pfizer. We met at actually it was a very similar experience to what we're doing right now, except it was in person. It was at the New York Academy of Sciences, which has a really great like diverse set of not just scientific like symposiums, but also career development symposium. So it was a panel like this with people that have already made the transition to industry. So yeah, I think, it's a different world that we're living in right now in that everything has to be virtual, but there's ways to do it. And LinkedIn is a great tool right now. One thing that I actually didn't have a LinkedIn until I was looking for my current job at Regeneron. And that was like in the beginning of this year. And, people were telling me tips and I was like very uncomfortable by the prospect of like, just kind of like requesting people on LinkedIn and messaging them, but it works. People answer you. And I've had people like contact me and just be like, hey, can I have an informational interview with you? And we've done like Zoom calls. So there is a way to network virtually, but my experience was in person.
Thanks, Alyssa. So we'll go with Saurabh. You want to?
Yeah, a very, very good point by Alyssa. So I hear from a lot of people here in Germany and Europe generally that networking is very difficult and language barriers, but I feel that people don't approach in a right way as well. This is the biggest hurdle. And also there is no addition of value. Like sometimes people are just contacting by saying, hi, Saurav, can you review my CV or not proper messages. There should be some introduction first. There should be some understanding, and then we can move further for resume or whatever that is. Another thing I would like to mention, the underrated thing is LinkedIn. And despite being another platform, Zing in Germany or Austria, where I am currently, LinkedIn is really underrated. That's how I got my job here. I was contacted by a recruiter and I was really active on my LinkedIn, really like posting almost every day. Really important professional stuff, not what's going on in my personal life. I have Facebook, Instagram for that. So if you can really add value either personally or via LinkedIn, any way you can find, then I think this is very, very easy to get a job, to network, etc.
Thanks, Saurav. So with Sandhya is totally different story, I believe. So we would like to hear a transition story now.
Sure. So yeah, when I started my PhD, my mind was set on being a professor eventually and setting up my own lab and being in academia. But I guess through 4 years of 3 years of PhD, 3.5 years of PhD, and then 4 years of postdoc, somewhere around the middle of that, I realized that no, I don't want to be what I wanted to be a couple of years ago. Um, and I was a very different person at that point. I used to love just being in lab by myself, surrounded by a small circle of friends, never networked as much, never thought that, scientists should speak or have conversations out of the lab and so on. But I think I attended a couple of like career development sessions that were run by NTU or by some student unions around Singapore. And I came to know that you have to just get out of it, get out of your comfort zone and start talking to people. So 2014, when I started Biotech in Asia, along with some of my PhD classmates, we basically were interviewing scientists and researchers to write their science research in simple English. So that was how we started that blog, and then it became a news website. I still remember attending at least 10 events and standing in the corner of the room, not being comfortable going to reach out to the speakers or the panelists or people that were there. I was like, what am I doing here? How am I going to interview people? But eventually in the 11th event that I went to, I realized I have to step out and start talking to people. So I guess networking is something that all of us have been saying over and over again. Then it started off with in-person networking, then following up with emails, then connecting them with them on LinkedIn. I think once you've met them face to face, if you connect with them on LinkedIn and drop a note saying, hey, I met you at that event, hope you remember, and this is who I am, I'd love to connect with you. So you have to have a context when you connect on LinkedIn. Yes, you can send random connections, but please do your prior research on that person whom you're reaching out to. Just don't drop an email saying, I'd love to have a 10-minute conversation with you. Honestly, everybody's busy. Okay, so I think that line puts off a lot of people when you say, hey, I'd like to get on a call with you. Here's my Zoom link. Like now in the post-COVID era, literally everybody's right now on Zoom fatigue. Nobody wants to get on Zoom anymore, honestly. So you have to be, I know it's a lot of time and effort to like go through every person's background and learn who they are and what they are. But I think reading about them for 5-10 minutes gives you a better angle to like knowing about them a bit more, and tailor, your messages to them have to be tailor made. It cannot just be one template that you copy paste. It just does not work. So yeah, that ways I got out of my comfort zone and realized that LinkedIn is this separate world, this amazing connection world apart from Instagram and Facebook, where it's more personal. And honestly, one big suggestion or advice would be, don't send your CVs in the first message. Do not say I'm looking for a job or like, oh, I hope you can hire me in your first message. You want to build a connection, a rapport. And I think transition takes a minimum six months to a year. It's not going to happen overnight. It does take a bit of effort to get there. It's not easy to just transition from something you've been there for a lot of years, and then you want to leave that and enter into something new. Even if you want to transition within your same field, even if you want to become a postdoc, another postdoc from a previous postdoc, you still need some time to transition that, especially if you're going to travel to a different country. So that's kind of how my journey started. And I think I'm a very keen observer. So I used to observe how people used to speak to other people. And I kind of started copying the way they used to introduce themselves, the way they used to network. I think that really works. If you find someone who's super impressive and the way just the body language or the way you talk to other people is just so important. I think that matters a lot. And that's kind of how I came out. And now I'm such an open person that I can have a conversation instantly in 30 seconds with anybody. And I can make that connection within the next 30 seconds, be it a student or a CEO of a big company versus another startup CEO or founder or whatever it is. it just happens. It just clicks immediately, but it's taken 4-5 years of practice of, going back and forth on conversation. I think one of the key things that I've noticed recently is people just message, because right now I run a company and I'm hiring and so on. They drop me a message on LinkedIn saying, hey, here's my CV. I hope my qualifications fit some role in your company. And have you even gone, and then I go look at this person's profile. They actually have really good qualifications and skills and really good degrees, but that message just puts me off. I don't feel like going further, even though the person might be great on paper. So have you even looked at the company's website to see if we are hiring, to see if there's something there, that connects with you or, matches what you're looking for? So yeah, so I think the transition was slow for me, but it's in the positive angle, and it takes a lot of effort. You have to get out of your comfort zone, break that bubble. I think all of us have the fear of networking and have this fear like, what if I sound dumb? Honestly, it's okay. Like, that other person is probably never going to remember you. So just go ahead, ask the questions. And if it clicks, it clicks. If it doesn't click, just go to the next person and ask the same question. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Sandhya. So I think Chris has a question right now. He just rolled finger. So yeah.
Yeah, so I had one for Alyssa. I was wondering, because you said there was a postdoc friend who finished their job and then you kind of got it. So did you have the like technical qualifications, or was it completely another field? Because I think this is still required, right? It has to fit somehow.
Yeah, great question. So for me, the reason that I was able to make that contact with the person who I eventually kind of like took over her role in a way. So we met like at a networking event, like I said, but we kind of similar to what Sandhya was just like touching on, we had become almost like friends, like just because we had very similar research background. So her postdoc project was very similar to something that I was working on during my PhD. So we actually kept running in the same circles at multiple different networking events and multiple different like conferences for what we were researching. So that's actually how we, like we knew each other. Like we had run into each other probably like 6 times or so. So we did kind of establish that rapport, and that really is important. Like what Sandhya was saying, you don't want to just like make it seem like you're using someone to network with them. You want to like learn from them and really like establish a connection before you start asking for favors and things like that. So yeah, we had basically a very similar research background. Technically, I will be honest, my like technical skills probably weren't, I needed to learn a lot when I transitioned into my postdoc in industry, just technically, but the scientific background, we were working on the same pathway. We were both working on like cancer metabolism and mTOR. So like my research background was like exactly what they were looking for. And I think that really helped me land that position. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I have a question for Sandhya. So as a employer, if you have a position in your company and then you are looking for someone to join, so when you get those CVs as a employer, what exactly you look for in those CVs, like few key points that might help us to customize our CV?
Sure. I think shorter the CV, the better. And definitely look at what the job ad says. Like, does it say a 2-page CV versus a 1-page CV? What exactly are they asking for in a CV? Let's say there's no specifications, then keep it to 2 pages. And honestly, put your top publications in place. For example, if you want to show your scientific skills, if you're applying for a scientific role. If you're applying for a, let's say like Alyssa, a writer's role, or more on the business side or writing opportunities, keep your publications the last, but also publications are important for writing. So don't leave them out. But let's say you are leaving the researcher side of things and you're going for a business role or something like that. Do show how much of like volunteer work or some sort of work that you've done on the business side. Let it be as small as volunteered at an organization to organize an event or something like that. Even that's super important. You should really think and tailor make your CVs for different roles. Just definitely not have one CV for all applications. It has to be according to which role you're applying for, and it has to be edited that way. So for us as employers, I think the CV has to be a quick read. Like within 5 minutes, I should know what kind of a person you are, where you're living, what your experience is. So education, what's your education? We definitely mostly match education with the qualifications that we have asked for. But if there's a lot of experience, then we can say, okay, we were looking for a PhD, but you have a master's. Okay, it might not be a problem based on whatever you've done. If it's a role where publications really don't matter, I would say actually leave them out. Just give the link to the PubMed URL. Just say, if you want to look at my publications, here's my link, and that's it. So that saves space on your CV. Mm-hmm. Definitely write a cover letter, at least half a page or a full page cover letter, even if they don't ask for it. It can be part of your email text itself. It doesn't have to be a separate document. But it has to show that you've read about the company, you know what role you're applying for, and where you are in terms of your career right now. Where you're working, are you looking to transition? Have you already left your job and you're waiting for some opportunity to come, and like that? And also don't sound too eager in the application. Like, I'm really looking forward to working in this company or something like that. Don't say, I'm very impressed by your company and your technology. I'd love to, be considered for this role or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think a very important thing is to mention as part of the email which role you're applying for exactly. And please don't apply to multiple roles in the same company. Just saying that I have all this experience, so I fit into all these roles. At least if you're applying for a second role in the same company, explain as to why you've sent your CVs for both roles. And you can actually put it in the same application or in the same email that you put in. You can say that, I'm thinking that my skill fits both roles, so I'm applying to both. I hope I get considered for one. And for us specifically, we definitely, once the CV is like impressive in the first 5 minutes, that's literally what we are looking at. We immediately go for a first round interview. And for us as a startup company, we look at more body language aptitude rather than skill or education, because we feel EQ is something that's very important. IQ can be learnt along the way. So you have to be presentable. Now everything is via Zoom. Make sure there's lighting. Make sure you're in a place that it's silent. Make sure your camera works. Make sure your mic works. Try and test it before you start anything, because honestly, as employers, we have very less time for the interview and we're like rushing through stuff. And if you take 10, 15 minutes to set up your tech, and you lose out a lot on the interview part. And I think during the interview, most employers will ask, do you have questions for us? You should have questions for them. Everything from what's the culture of the company, what are your work, is it flexible, what do you feel about professional versus personal lives? I think all of us need that line between professional and personal. We're just too scared to ask these questions, but you should be open to just ask these questions. Do have a list of at least 3 to 5 questions that you want to ask the company. That shows that you've done your research and you're really excited about the role and you're really wanting to look forward to what it is that the future holds in this company.
Thanks, Sandhya. So a question
I'm also
for Mason.
Curious to, okay, just ask one more. So I'm also curious to know that, if the position says the education requirement is master's and someone applying with a PhD, where do they stand?
So it's not a problem. So that's one of the questions you can ask in the email. And if you finally get called for the interview, you can ask the same thing, because I think at that point, main probability of 2 questions is what's your career development within the company, because they ask for a master's, but you have a PhD. So you're definitely more experienced and have more knowledge of certain things. So what would your growth be in the company, or what's the future looking for that position? And the second is, of course, the pay at the end of the day. What if that company had just budgeted for a master's person and they just don't have the budget for a PhD person? It depends whether you're ready for such a big pay cut. For example, if you're earning 100,000 a year and you're getting a 60,000, 40,000 pay cut, it depends whether you are okay with that or not. If you're really desperate for a transition and you've planned out your financials and so on, maybe you're okay with the pay cut. So yeah, so I think these are the two key questions that you can ask in the email itself, saying that, I noticed you've asked for a master's qualification. I do have a PhD, but I feel that this will be a great role for me, and I hope you consider. Yeah.
Thanks.
To add to Sandhya's points, so really excellent points mentioned by her. I couldn't say it better in all the ways. CV, how to make the CV or the cover letter, and if you feel that you are a fit for the position, just apply for it. Don't see whether you are MSc, PhD, technical. If you are feeling that you are a good fit, just apply for it. Start a communication. Do some research. That's very important. Don't want to reiterate, but some candidates. So I'm very new here, but we are already hiring a couple of people, and now I can see things from this side of the table. And some candidates are so unprepared. So CV looked really good, everything looked really good, but when they come there and they don't know what we are working on, this is such a big miss. And then we don't want to hire that candidate, no matter how good he is, because then it also comes to the practice of adaptability, whether he'll be able to adapt himself to the position. In industries, this is an important thing: adaptability and flexibility. In industry, this is very important. The person needs to work with a team of 6, 7, 10. Or currently, we have so many sites across US, China, Germany, Austria, and we are interacting with so many people. So if the personality is not there, then nothing can be done.
Those are very insightful tips. Thank you. So I have a question for Mason now, because now she's in her second half of the PhD, and now I think she must be like applying for the jobs, or maybe thinking about like transitioning and everything. So what are the challenges that you think that you are facing right now, and what do you like, how you try to like, get over it, or get like do around it?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, it's funny that you asked that, because one of my questions for everyone else is semi-related. And I think that this may be something that a lot of us face when we're finishing with our postdocs or even PhDs and considering the transition. I think the scariest part is the fact that we've invested so much time and energy and into what we got our PhD in and what we are pursuing in our postdoc. And it's scary, to be honest, to imagine transitioning away from what you've just spent so much time on and learning, to do something that maybe isn't so related. So I think that that's one of the challenges that I'm facing myself, is just really, kind of trying to focus on what is it exactly that I want to do, and is it, what part of industry do I want to be in? If I'm tied to my research, maybe I want to continue as a research scientist at a hospital rather than, fully transitioning at this point to industry. So those are the kind of things that I find myself facing, is really just personal, what do I want? And I still feel like I should know by now, but sometimes it's hard to know, and it's a scary leap. So I don't know if anybody else has any input on that moment leap and how you felt.
I can touch on that. So I, about 6 months ago, I started my job as a writer, and that was a huge leap, just like finally stepping away from the bench, which is, as scientists, especially as PhD scientists, I mean, we've been at the bench for so long. This is kind of like all we know. I mean, it's very scary. And I spent a lot of time, kind of what you were saying, like soul searching and trying to figure out like, if this was the right time and it was the right move. I spent a lot of time talking to people, trying to understand what it was like for them, what their current job is, if they missed the bench, if they felt like they could go back to the bench, if they felt like they made a bad decision. So I think like just getting comfortable with, talking to people about their experiences and just trying to see how that matches with like your interests would be really helpful. And I have no regrets. I honestly do not miss the bench. I think for me, like, I knew deep down that this was what I wanted, but it still is scary because this is what we have been trained for. But yeah, I mean, there's really no right answer, and you're not going to know if it's the right move until you do it. But you have to like just take the leap of faith. It's like you have to go with your gut, and just try to make as much of an informed decision as you can. Like talk to as many people as you can. Find people that have jobs that look interesting to you, and ask them if they will just talk with you. I really did spend like weeks before I started to look for a job. I was just like talking to different people, and then like every person I would talk to would be like, oh, you should talk to this person. Oh, you should talk to this person. I'm like that was really helpful. So I didn't necessarily like cold call, let's say, like people on LinkedIn. I kind of like would talk to one person who had the job I liked, and then they would recommend that I spoke to a different person, and like, you know, it's helpful to have that kind of like spider web of a network. So yeah, so just do your research until you feel comfortable taking that leap.
Yeah, I think just to add on to Alyssa is someone told me this a couple of years ago, and I follow this even till date. Is whoever you meet, ask them to make at least 3 more connections for you. So that's how you build your spider network. You literally at the end of the meeting or a call, you tell them, it'll be great if you can introduce me to 3 more most influential people that you are connected to. And I'd love to just be introduced to them so that I can do a call in the future at some point.
Saurabh, do you have to add anything to that?
Really excellent point. So cannot say anything else. I forgot the point actually. So nevertheless.
That's fine. Okay, no problem. So I think that was very insightful. So now for this question for like Alyssa and Gautam, like how was like your interview experience per se? Because this is like people are like transitioning from like academia to like industry, and then you are in like different jobs. But at the same time, like what made you like how you prepared yourself for the interview, that why like you stand out from like other candidates, or whether you didn't try, just that you made yourself like, I don't know how you prepared for that. So we can start with Saurabh.
Sure. Thanks for the question. So one of the main things that people generally are avoiding, I was doing a lot of research on the panel. So I got a list of panelists who are going to interview me. So it's important that you read their papers, you study what kind of work they have done, read a bit about the company. You shouldn't be blank the person who's going for the interview. That's very important. And they didn't ask me. So it was a video interview. So I had the opportunity to present my work. They didn't ask in the first round, but I made a 10 minutes presentation. So maybe that also made an impact, and they were okay, happily surprised that I have a kind of a presentation there. And even during on-site interview, so ask a lot of questions. That's very important. I think Sandhya was mentioning this point cannot be appreciated more. If you are not asking questions, that simply means you are not interested in the role, or you really don't want the role. And the more questions you ask, the better. They shouldn't be stupid questions, but related. Can be anything about the work culture, or hierarchy, or how the work day looks like in this role, all these kind of things. So I was always eager to ask all these questions, and there's a feedback I got at the end. So I was very interested, eager, did some research, and these points were really in my favor at that point.
That's good. Yeah. So I can actually add some points here because I just recently transitioned. So I think I totally agree with Saurabh there, is that you have to do like a lot of thorough investigation, like what you are like, you plan to go to the company, which company you're planning to go, or wherever. I mean, if you decide to a postdoc also, like, or whatever other things that work in hospital or anything, so you have to like, first I did like all the thorough investigation of what the company is doing. But at the same time, I think you have to like make your technical skills also like very good in a way, that because as you mentioned that they didn't really ask him for presentation. So in the same case, like they asked me for like a small presentation, but then they were like very impressed with the with kind of presentation that they were want to like hire me for this particular position. So that was like, that's a key, that how well prepared you are and how well that you convey. So first thing is that you prepare yourself, but then how you convey, that is like the next thing. And that I think in that, I think there are many, like when we call it as like imposter syndrome, we feel that this job is not, I'm not good for this job. it maybe you are good for, but just that you are not in your mind. And so you, even though you are prepared for the job, you don't really deliver that way. So you just have to like make up your mind for that kind of like imposter syndrome kind of thing. Okay, Alyssa, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just a little bit. So I think in industry, and of course, like these companies are trying to attract very good talent and like technical skills. But I think even more important than that is really the soft skills. Sandhya mentioned this before, I think you said like emotional quotient kind of thing. I think that, you know, even on this panel, if you look at all three of us experts, we've all said networking is so important. And that's not unique to us three. You're gonna find that like people that work in these companies are a little bit more social and a little bit more, they just have like presentation soft skills and like conversational communication skills. And these things are even more important to portray in an interview. Like your CV will say your technical background and your publications can speak for themselves. But when you go on the interview, I think that they're looking a little bit more for like, can you present your research in a clear way, use graphics, like really engage with the people, make eye contact. Can you talk about your research in a way that like makes sense to other people? I found that in like my interview at Pfizer, it felt so comfortable. Like I just felt like I was having good conversation with people. It didn't feel super stressful, like they were grilling me about my research, but we had like a very nice like back and forth conversation about my work, about their work. And I think that they're not intentionally testing your soft skills there, but like that's what comes across. And if you are able to be personable and make a connection with the person that's interviewing you, I think that is really what sets you apart. So yeah, I think it's hard to learn those skills. But you know, Sandhya even like had an example of like it took her years to become comfortable with it. And I think as scientists, we don't practice those skills enough. We are all like technique, research, but these things are important, and I think that's what sets you apart in an interview.
I think just two things to add here is don't talk too much in the sense, you know, you can be nervous, but that shows when you're like on and on and on, you're telling the same thing and you're like going on and on. When somebody asks, if the interviewer asks you a question, keep it to less than 2 minutes. If they want more, they will ask you. If they want less, you can see by them getting distracted. So you should read their body language and stop. You know, that's one thing. The second is, I think they both, you know, all of you spoke about presentations. Do ask the interviewer if they want a presentation first. If they do, keep it very short. Keep it to less than 8 to 9 slides. Keep it to less than 10 minutes. And you can even ask the interviewer on the call, you know, I have a couple of slides. It'll take me less than 10 minutes to present. Are you okay with that? And they will come back and say, mostly they'll come back and say, yeah, let's go for it. And then be prepared. Try practicing an interview with your colleagues or someone, or in front of the mirror. Even that, it may sound silly, it may look silly, but it's so important. And also learn to listen to the interviewer. Don't interrupt. These are all things that, you know, are very simple, but they make a very, very big impression on your interviewer.
I just want to follow up on that. I think that's a good point about the presentations and like sticking to a time span or like whatever they tell you. Definitely stick to the time there. But I know for me, when I interviewed for my postdoc, I did have to give a full seminar, and I think that was pretty standard. When I saw other candidates come into my company, they would give like a 45-minute seminar, but we would tell you like how long the seminar should be. So just make sure you stick to whatever you know, amount of time that they give you.
Thank you. So Chris, I think you have a question there.
Yeah, thanks. I have also something to add to that. So I think networking is definitely important, but so I feel it's still, so I do a lot of networking, I would say. I have a lot of contacts on LinkedIn, and I also try to stay in touch with friends that transition to industry already. But I feel like you still have to apply for a job ad. You have to go through the application process and HR and everything. So even if you know people, I mean, they can forward you the job ad, but it's not so easy to just have someone in a company and then you just ask for a job, right? And they give you one. And the other thing is that I feel that the technical skills, so techniques, are much more important. So if you look at all the job ads, you will see what the industry wants you to know and to be able to do. But of course, you would have to do that research like 3 years before, and then start learning those techniques and stuff. So I think that's a big hurdle for me, because in my PhD, I did techniques that might not be needed in industry.
Yeah, that's
Very
right. I
good
think
points by. Sorry,
Go ahead, go
Abhijit,
ahead.
I have one quick comment. Very good points by Chris. And this also a difference in the culture. Hiring culture of Europe is, especially Germany, Austria, is a bit different than, for example, USA, where the network is much more relied upon. Here too, I wouldn't say it's not very important as well, but a lot of hirings happen via regular application process here, as Chris was saying. So depends on the country and the company the person is applying to. That's very important as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would like to add that point here that I think everyone as expert has stressed on that is like networking, because I mean, when I came to actually Bay Area, so I started much more involved in like STEMPeers. So you tend to like meet a lot of people. Now I think it's the post COVID, the things have totally changed, but still like I'm like active part of the STEMPeers. But at the same time, then you talk to your like peers and other things. And the current job that I have right now, it's actually one of my good friend of mine. She actually sent my resume, and that's how, I mean, it is not only that, but that's really helpful, because if someone they trust, if they send a resume to them, it's like it's a different. But again, it's different, depends on like the geographical location and other things. So it depends on like multiple things, and you have to like follow those ones. So now, Saurav, you have any question there? I can see your face there.
Yeah, so I'd like to add one point here. So sometimes, on LinkedIn, we see some job posting that come shared directly by the talent acquisition manager, or someone who is actively working in that department. So sometimes I feel applying to those positions and then leave a personal note to them might help to get in more personally in terms of those opportunities. So yeah, so that might, yeah, definitely add some advantage to it.
Yeah. Okay. So now I think we are talking about like most of the time that we are like doing now after post COVID, that we have all the interview like that are like online now. So do you guys have like any tips for all the people who are like watching about like want to transition that now after like this post COVID thing, that what exactly how we are going to like the tips for interviewing, like or to interview? So we can go with Alyssa.
Sure. So I actually interviewed for my current position right before everything shut down. So I did go on site for my interview, but we have been trying to hire new people into our group, and we've done a couple of remote interviews. I think that it's almost a little bit more informal, which is nice. It maybe takes some of the pressure off, which is great, but don't let that make you too informal. I think body language is still really important, and you want to look professional, at least from here up, that can be seen on video. And I think that, you know, feel free to ask questions about what this process is going to look like for these remote interviews, because they are more foreign to us. I think, you know, recruiters are expecting you to understand what an in-person interview would look like, but when it comes to remote, none of us know what we're doing. So just feel free to kind of like ask the questions that you need to ask in order to put your best foot forward. And make sure that you are like speaking clearly. It could be a little bit harder to get your point across through all of these different devices and things. So maybe just speak extra clear when you're answering questions and things like that. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Saurav? Okay, Sandhya, you want to go for that? You want to give us some tips for the online interview?
Sure. Like I mentioned earlier, make sure your internet connection is stable and you have good lighting. You put up a virtual background. If you have too many personal pictures or anything, hung behind you or something like that, then you can put up like a virtual background. Um, be like sit straight, maintain eye contact. So eye contact on the computer is very weird. You have to be staring at your webcam and not at the Zoom window or the Skype window, which is kind of weird because you want to be able to judge their body language and their expressions, but at the same time you have to maintain eye contact. So keep looking. So I'm looking now at the camera, as you can see, but I'm still, then I go down for a couple of seconds, look at all your expressions, and I go back up on the camera. So it is hard, but it's important. And if you're working with a laptop, make sure the laptop is slightly up so that it's on your face here and the screen is not like this. You see, and then you can literally see people up their nose. Literally, it's not a joke, but it's not the best angle, as you can imagine. Try not to move your hands too much, like, oh, I did this, like that, don't do that. Try to have some sort of an expression. Interestingly, we have hired like 8 people in the last 10 months over Zoom. So I exactly know, and 8 people means I've interviewed at least 100 candidates. So I exactly know how it is. And I've literally when we set up the email, we actually send them like a list of things to take care of when you're interviewing, like, lighting, and make sure your internet is stable, make sure your camera works, make sure your mic is fine. Do a trial call with your family member or someone and make sure the mic is not like giving some background or echo. Try it in the room where you're going to be interviewing. So the acoustics are like maintained. It's all important because if there's an echo, the interviewer pretty much is going to be like, what did you say? Can you repeat it? And you're going to lose out on all of that. So I think, Zoom, again, have as much enthusiasm as you can. And I think you have to double your passion and enthusiasm when you're online than you would do it in person. And please do look for the expressions from your interviewer. Like there is a lag always, but try to like learn like what they're thinking of or what they feel like telling you. Yeah.
So can I? So we have some questions on the YouTube live feed right now, and since we have Sandhya, so one of the questions I have, and one of the questions we got was, so if a postdoc has an idea for a startup, do you have any tips for pitching? How do you look for investors, financing? And if I'm looking for a job in a startup, what or even any company, like since you interview people, how is the best way to frame salary related questions and other questions that you generally ask companies? So can you tell us about that?
Sure. So the first question is, if you have an idea and you want to do a startup, how do you go about it, I guess? So I would say run the idea, do an elevator pitch. Like that's called a 30-second pitch, where you can basically put your company's vision in 1 sentence or 2 sentences and speak to 100 people about it. 100 people, your colleagues, your friends, your family, whatever it is, run it by them and look at their expression and what they have to say after that. If it's a very, very specific molecule that you're working on for a very specific disease, don't let out the secret, of course, don't let out the IP, but try running it by 100 people and see what they feel. Next is, how do you get in touch with investors? It's a very tricky question in the sense that if you're pure academic and you've never come across investors, it is going to be super, super hard to raise that money. So first question would be, are you the only founder? Do you want to get a co-founder who has a business sense and who has run a company probably before and has some connections to investors? Then try to find that person among your network. Or let's say you want to join a founder program like Entrepreneur First or something like that, where you can find a co-founder for your idea. So look at these programs. For me, it so happened that it just flowed in the right way, but I met my first investor in my first company who wasn't an investor then. I had actually interviewed him for Biotech in Asia for an interview. Over the years, he saw how I was working. And when I decided to start Shiok Meets, he literally called me up and said, I want to be the first investor in your company. So it just so happened that it, went that way. So yeah, if you can find a business person to be your co-founder, and honestly, I think a scientist shouldn't be the CEO of a company, even though I was, but I did a lot of business before I became the CEO. I think you should be the CTO or the chief technology or the chief scientific officer, and let a business person do the business side of things. Again, network. And if you're thinking of doing a startup, for the next 1 year, all you should think of is the startup, and go ahead for startup events. If you just attend startup events, you'll meet at least 30 investors there, minimum. And then that's how you make the connection. Next is, I guess, if you're interviewing for a startup, right? That was the next question. Yeah, okay. So what was the exact question?
So
Sorry.
how, not just startup, like any company, since you interview people, that's why this question is directed towards you. How do you frame salary related questions for your
Yeah. So most ads would just say salaries are according to industry standards or something like that. Some of them will not even ask you for your expected salary. So that is one of the key questions that you do have to ask them if you're called for the interview. It can be part of your email, but depends which company you're applying to. If it's a very, very big company, look at Glassdoor, speak to some people who are working in that company and kind of understand what's the median salary or the range of salary. If it's a startup, it can be anywhere from the least to the most, depending on how well funded the startup is. So you have to start looking at how much funding the startup has raised. Let's say they raised 4 million 4 years back and they haven't raised anything after that, they've probably run out of money. So you should also keep that in mind and think of where the company stands. As part of the interview, when you have questions to ask, you can simply just ask them. It'll be great to know what kind of compensation model you're looking at. My previous salary was this annually, and I'm hoping that I can at least get a 10 or 20% raise. That is pretty much it. You put it out there for them, and I'm willing to negotiate, of course. So it'll be great if you can tell me a range of salary. And let's say the employer says, you tell me how much you want. Then you think about it. Definitely look at your previous pay scale and see the job role, whether it's a very big upgrade from what you've been doing, or it's a transition, it's your first transition into an industry role, then I would say keep it at what you used to get or a little higher than that. And then if the company really, really likes you, actually, they will pay you a lot more, depending on how much they've budgeted for. You can ask for everything from what are the other benefits? Do you provide insurance, for example, depending on which country you are? What are the other wellness packages do you give for employees? If you're joining a startup, do ask about stock options. They will give you equity in the company. And that is a big incentive for you because you start owning shares of the company. So that's a very, very crucial question that you have to ask a startup for sure. What are the employee stock options? Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sandhya. So now I think most of the people have, like most of the postdoc that have transition now, they have, or transitioning, they have a question now in their mind, like it's mostly for Alyssa and Saurabh, is that, do you think that postdoc really help you in like getting this job? Or like, do you think that if your transition after PhD would have been like better? What's your thought on that? Alyssa?
Sure. So I don't know if necessarily for my current job as a scientific writer, a postdoc in general was super necessary. However, I think that my experience in industry during my postdoc was extremely helpful. I think one of the things that is the hardest transitioning from academia to industry is just kind of like understanding how like pharmaceutical company works and how business works. I think we're used to being a little bit more informal, and like academia is very different than industry. Like a lot of the research can be very similar, but the way that things are done is very different. And so having that experience during my postdoc in industry and in like more of a corporate setting was really helpful for me to transition into my current job as a writer at Regeneron. But the my postdoc, I feel like the technical experience that I got as a writer, it wasn't all that crucial. However, it definitely helps me in my job kind of relate to the scientists and understand the assays that they're doing. But again, I think a lot of that has to do with coming from industry rather than just having postdoc experience in general.
So would continue what Alyssa said. There's no black and white answer to this question, because I recently had a friend who was doing a postdoc for literally 10 years, and he got a really good position in Novo Nordisk. And so there is no fixed answer to this question, how long. But in my case personally, the postdoc was very important, and it helped me a lot to get this position. Especially I did my PhD from India, although it was a good PhD in a good group, good institute, but many places then they don't recognize a PhD from, if it's not from Europe, US, or things like that. So it was very important. However, I have seen that sweet point is between 2 to 4 years of postdoc is really well taken in industry. But there is no fixed answer to this question.
Sorry, thanks, Saurabh. So I think we are towards the end of like the wrapping up the session now. So before we wrap up, I think I would like to ask our panelists like Chris, Saurabh, and Mason that if they have any like clue, like if they have any questions before we wrap up, and any final remarks that they want to make. We go start with Chris.
Actually, none that I could think of now. So I learned a lot of things. Very nice, Kat. Yeah, maybe the other start and I can think about it. But if not, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, Mason.
So I just I want to just add, thanks for having all of us. I've learned a lot. I did do an informational interview recently with someone who, when I was talking about my fears about moving on and things, they said, what you have to remember is that in your PhD and with a postdoc, you kind of narrow in on exactly what you want to do and what you want to run a lab. What you do in your postdoc is what you do for the rest of your life, essentially, in academia. And industry isn't quite like that. You might have 10 jobs before it's your favorite job of all time and all that. So I thought that was really good advice. It seems like you guys are nodding, so maybe echoing that sentiment. And something to keep in mind as we move forward, we may not get our most ideal job right away, but we can keep working and keep growing. And
Thanks, Mason. Saurabh?
Yeah, so it was great learning all these insights from the expert panelists. So that will definitely help like people like us who are in the position of transitioning to the industry, and then shape ourselves like in a better way to convey our message, and then get into a good position in industry. Thanks for all your feedback.
Okay, before we get like a final like the wrap up thing from our experts, we just have like quick question coming up from our YouTube channel, which is goes like PhD with like when the job requirement actually says that PhD with 2 to 3 years of experience of anything like machine learning or other things like. So does that mean that you have to have additional experience, like is it like a PhD that counts, or it's like after PhD how long you have done that counts? So you can start with Sandhya.
Yeah, generally we say PhD with 1 or 2 years experience or 2 or 4 years. If it says 5 or 6 years experience, then don't apply if you're a fresh PhD. They may not be really considering it. But if it says 1 to 3 years or 1 to 4 years between that, I would say go for it. And as part of your cover letter, you can mention that, I don't have experience post PhD. So to answer your question directly, yes, it means after PhD. It's not inclusive of the PhD years. So it means like a postdoctoral or an industry experience after your PhD. But you can mention that, the qualifications you've asked for, or the skills or the roles of the job description is exactly what I used to do in PhD, and I feel that I'll be a good fit. So even though I don't have that few years of experience, I hope you're interested to interview me or something like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Alyssa or Saurabh, do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree with everything that she just said. Yeah, I think that these are sometimes more recommendations than set in stone guidelines. So don't be afraid to apply to something just because you don't meet exactly the qualifications.
Thanks.
Yeah, same thing for, like, as we mentioned, for MSc or PhD, if you can apply for a different degree, you can definitely apply. When don't apply to a chemistry degree if you have environmental science experience or PhD. It should be related. For sure, you should have some technical skills in the area. You should be able to fulfill the role at least 70 to 80%. That's the sweet point, at least in R&D industries. And don't give up. That's the advice. Like, if you are not getting a position, whether industry, academia, whatever it is, learn something from this. Like, what did I do wrong? Or maybe nothing wrong happened, but keep it as a learning experience. You were not rejected, like your application was rejected. You are still a good candidate. You will get the next job. So never give up. That's my message.
Yeah, I think just to add into Saurav's
Yeah.
comment is, let's say you've interviewed but you didn't get the job, do write back and ask them for feedback as to why. That really
Yeah, that's
scares employers. So do ask them. It really scares them. Try to remind them twice or thrice if they don't respond to you, and after that, if they don't, just let it go. But if they're a really good company and really good employer, they should come back saying 1, 2, 3, or we just found a better suited candidate. Then you can go back and say, I'd like to know a bit more about the feedback so that I can better my next interview or something like that. Yeah.
So, Alyssa, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the session?
Just yeah, keep the hope alive. You will find something that works for you. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions and you want to talk more. Yeah.
All right. So thanks all the panelists. I think we are here like the panel from all over the world, almost like from Singapore to Germany and US. So it was like really nice. So I think to just wrap up the whole session now, what we have actually learned, if you want to like transition to from like postdoc or academia to like industry, what things we have to done from like the main thing that I think all the panelists, I think, or the experts are stressed on to like networking. So that's one of the crucial thing. And I think we can just build more onto that. And I hope that like people who are like watching now all over the world, this particular like uh, our panel, I think they would be like know by now that what things they have to do. So really thank you for all your valuable comments. And of course, if you have any questions and anything, like you have STEMPeers, whole STEMPeers community here. So I think with that I would give the stage to Manish. And Manish.
Thank you, Abhijit, and thank you to all our panelists and experts, and thank you to all our viewers who've taken out the time today to hear this discussion, be a part of the discussion. So I would yeah, we can just wrap this up here, and I would like to remind everyone that we have our next panel discussion going up live in less than an hour. There we discuss post transition from postdoc to an academic setting. So we'll see you at 12 p.m. EST.